Top 10 worst years in human history.
Around for roughly 200,000 years. And honestly, most
Let me guess a few of them. Something with the Black Plague. World War II when the bombs dropped. In human history, I was going to say in history, probably when the meteor hit the dinosaurs. Humans weren't around then. 2008. Why? The housing market crash? Y2K when the world didn't end.
that time was spent dying in pools of our own diarrhea.
2020. I don't think like COVID years are top 10 worst years in human history. Yeah, Holocaust. That's why I said World War II.
So when you think of the worst years in human history, it's basically all of them. But that would be a boring video. So let's be prisoners of the moment and allow recency bias to cloud our analysis as we rank the top 10 worst years to be alive in human history. Number 10, 1918. This year kicks off with a
I feel like that was a pretty fire year now. Wasn't that right before the Roaring 20s? Roaring 20s was like a great time to fucking like be a middle-class American.
little something called the Spanish flu.
Unless you were black or a woman or a minority or a non-white man or disabled. Okay, so maybe it wasn't a great time to be alive during the 1920s.
Surprisingly, this flu wasn't
Or gay. Yeah, okay.
actually from Spain, but it was still no bueno. Exact numbers for the death toll are kind of hard to pin down.
Oh, Spanish flu.
But estimates range from 20 to 50 million human deaths globally. The Spanish flu was
50 million deaths. How many people died from COVID? 7.1 million. Wow. So Spanish flu was like 6 times that? No, 7 point something times.
particularly deadly for two reasons. One, it was a brand new strain of the flu, and two, the conditions of the Great War made it so much easier for the disease to spread. Soldiers returning home brought the flu with them, infecting people in remote areas who had no immunity to the virus. What was extra special about the Spanish flu was that it was unusually deadly for young adults compared to other flu viruses of the time, leading to a significantly higher death toll. This disease
Chat, if you got the Spanish flu, do you think you would eat that shit? I think I got a pretty weak immune system when it comes to like big illnesses. I had COVID twice and I was fine. But that was COVID. Spanish flu, like part of me, okay, I would never want it, but part of me is like, would I die with the Black Plague? Yeah. No modern medicine, right? Like, let's say you get the Spanish flu, but you're not allowed to take like Advil, Tylenol, nothing. Like, you're just you're ripping it. You know, like you're lasting that shit out. It's wraps. Most of us are dying.
was terrifying for doctors, not just
Black Plague has to be on this. The Black Plague was so bad that people thought it was an evil that brought the end of the world, bro. That many people fucking died. There were bodies in the streets, piles of dead people. When the Black Plague was like the devil himself coming back to Earth, bro. Like it was a third of Europe. I'm pretty sure it was more than a third of Europe. I think it was maybe a third of Europe as a whole, but a ton of, like, certain areas, like, almost everybody died. How many people in Europe died of the Black Plague? 50 million people, but this was in the 1300s. So 50 million people in the 1300s is way more than the 1900s. 30 to 60% of the continent's population of Europe died. Florence, for example, lost up to 60% of its population, similar to London. So, like, heavily populated cities lost, like, more than half of their people.
just because of how quickly it spread or how quickly their
It was a third of the world. That's what it was.
patients died, but the process of how people died from it. Heliotrope cyanosis was a symptom of the Spanish flu, where a patient's skin would slowly turn purple as their lungs filled with fluid, preventing them from getting enough oxygen into their bloodstream. The blue/purple color would start in their lips and fingers, but eventually spread across their whole body as they neared death. After the patient passed, their entire body would then quickly turn from purple to black. Truly horrific stuff. To make matters worse, 1918 was also the final year of World War I, which saw another 5 million global casualties and made most of Europe no fun. Also in this year, you had the Russian Revolution going on, which ended the
God.
House of Romanov for good with the assassination of Nicholas II and his family this year. This revolution allowed Vladimir Lenin to take power, where he established a totalitarian dictatorship that oversaw the mass killing of political dissidents. The revolution was marked by brutal civil war and famine, which killed millions more. And finally, the Treaty of Versailles was being drafted, which, while not initially terrible, put Germany in a super bad mood that had some pretty major downstream consequences. But more on that later. Number 9, 1492.
What happened in 1492? I feel like there's a gap. I feel like there's a gap in human knowledge. Like, most humans know a lot of shit that happened between 1800 and, like, today. And then you know a little bit about the 1600s and, like, Jamestown and, you know, fucking witch trial shit, blah, blah, blah. You know, you could even go back to, like, certain, like, poets or people that were alive, like musicians in, like, 1300s. 1492, oh, Columbus. Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492. Ooh. That one slipped the brain for a minute there. Yeah.
We all know in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. But by doing
You gotta say the rhyme for me to know. You can't just show me the date.
that, Columbus also opened up a portal to hell for nearly everyone who is currently living in the Americas.
Yo, that motherfucker was a horrible person, bro. They don't teach. Yo, they deadass didn't teach. I feel like now they probably do. I remember when I was a kid, bro, they did not teach about Columbus being a horrible person. They were like, Columbus founded the Americas. That motherfucker lied to the Native Americans and said that the fucking moon was gonna, or the sun was gonna disappear, or the moon was gonna disappear. They lied. He was like, hey, the sun's gonna disappear if you don't fucking give us food. And they were like, no, it won't. Because who the fuck would believe that? And he just knew knowledge about astronomy. And he said his God was more powerful than theirs. And then there was a fucking solar eclipse. And the sun disappeared. And then they fucking gave them all their food. And then died.
Every indigenous person that came in contact with the Europeans.
I thought he said the moon would be of blood. I'm pretty sure he just predicted a solar eclipse. Yeah, in 1504. There was a total lunar eclipse. A lunar eclipse. During his fourth voyage, Christopher Columbus induced the inhabitants of Jamaica to continue provisioning him and his hungry men, intimidating them by predicting a total lunar eclipse. Some claim Columbus used the ephemeris of the German astronomer, but Columbus himself attributed the prediction to the Almanac of Abraham Zacuto. He got beached, blah, blah, blah. They needed food. They couldn't give it to him. And then he, like, basically just, like,
settler was
lied to them. He would also, like, you know, do some pretty fucked up shit in general.
Killed by a disease, killed in the slave trade, killed in war, or died of a broken heart. And while it certainly didn't all happen in 1 year, the introduction of European settlers to the Americas ended up killing 90% of the indigenous population.
Even if it was a peaceful interaction, Europeans brought over diseases that the Native Americans hadn't encountered yet. And then they all died. Same thing with, like, a lot of encounters with, like, Amazonian, like, tribes. Like, you just, like, go see them. You could be peaceful, and then they're all just gonna get, like, fucking smallpox and die.
Diseases like smallpox, measles, and influenza decimated communities that had no immunity to these foreign illnesses. I guess one could argue that the events of 1492 had positive effects.
It was not peaceful. I'm saying there was multiple interactions. There were instances of peaceful interactions. Many were not.
On much of humanity.
I'm not with Columbus. I'm talking about, like, people just arriving to the Americas.
Leading to the age of exploration and the eventual globalization of trade and culture that brought us things like pizza and chocolate. However, the near extinction of an entire continent civilization does put it on our list. Number 8, 2008. This is probably the
housing market crash. I feel like we're jumping pretty heavily here. The housing market crash of 2008 was worse than smallpox.
Height of recency bias, but
and Vladimir Lenin.
Who cares? It sucked. 2008 was the year the entire world realized that rich people just basically make up how much money there is. And for a number of reasons too complicated to go into in this video, something called Lehman Brothers went out of business, and then the entire global economy collapsed. Stock markets around the world crashed. The American auto industry nearly went belly up, and the cost of food and gas.
And the bubble of borrowing money or having debt to buy assets is like what's happening right now with the AI bubble. I'm not trying to, like, make people panic, but the shit that happened right before the 2008 housing market crash where people were taking on debt to buy houses and assets is exactly what's happening right now with big businesses. So if it fails, they're fucked.
Went through the roof. It was the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression, causing millions of Americans to lose their jobs and homes. Also, if you've ever wondered, why do houses cost so much these days? Well, in the aftermath of the 2008 mortgage crisis, new home construction basically stopped for about 10 years because nobody could get a loan. And since there wasn't a 10-year hiatus on unprotected sex, we now have way too many people and way too few houses. So thanks again 2008 for still ruining all of our lives. What? China and Australia's economy actually grew during the Great Recession? What do you mean America isn't the center of the universe? Number 7, 73,000 BC.
Yeah, I feel like that's a little absurd to put the 2008 housing market crisis as one of the worst years in human history. Like, I wouldn't even say that's like top 50. Like, you could say 30s was like the Great Depression, because that was bad for the world as well.
Okay, so we're a little loosey-goosey on the exact year, but trust me, whenever it was bad. Rewind
73,000 BC. I love how we're jumping around history right now. We got Spanish flu. We have Christopher Columbus, 2008, and now 73,000 BC.
Clock 70 or so millennia, and you'll witness what's known as a super
Pompeii? When was Pompeii? Wait, is this Pompeii?
volcano eruption.
No, Pompeii was not 73,000 BC. 73,000 BC, there wasn't fucking cities yet. When was Pompeii? That was probably like fucking 3,000 years ago. 79 CE, so 2,000 years ago.
This particular event is known as the Toba catastrophe and is probably the thing Indonesia is second most famous for after Komodo dragons. This eruption set off a 10-year volcanic winter that nearly eliminated the entire human species. The Toba eruption released so much volcanic ash into the atmosphere that it blocked sunlight, leading to a drastic drop in global temperatures. The few survivors faced harsh conditions, with scarce food and resources, struggling to maintain their communities. The entire human population left on Earth was somewhere between 3,000 and 10,000 people, or roughly the size of Brandon, South Dakota.
And we're all descendants of them. Wow. We're all related to those people. I feel like that's so cool that like every person has a common ancestor, like what, 60 people ago or something. Like there's somebody that so we're all related in some way. Yeah. But not in a sense of like incest. But I'm pretty sure this era is when they were making like was it whale bones? No, I think it might have been like, what's that motherfucker from Ice Age? A mammoth. Mammoth bone huts. Yeah, people used to live in this. Stuff that looked like this. Ukraine. Mammoth bone structure homes. This was like when it was like really fucking cold out. They would make shit like this out of just straight animal remains because it was so insulative. And they would put like hides and other stuff on the outside because it was just cold as fuck.
You've never heard of Brandon, South Dakota? Okay, Madison Square Garden can hold around 20,000 people, so the entire population left on Earth after that eruption could fit in MSG twice. This phenomenon is known as a genetic bottleneck, and is also why we're all kind of related. Number 6, 1929. The Roaring Twenties came to an abrupt end in 1929 when the U.S. stock market crashed, setting off, stop me if you've heard this before, a global economic collapse. The Great Depression that followed was a decade-long economic
Oh no! American steel is down! Let me go withdraw all my money from the bank. And then they had no money.
disaster that affected almost every country in the world.
Yeah, imagine pulling up to a bank going, I want to withdraw my money. And they go, we don't have it. Huh?
Mental health was
We don't have it. Huh?
at an all-time low immediately following the market crash. Self-deletion rates were so high that some hotel operators in New York City would ask guests if they needed a room for sleeping or jumping out of. That's real. In the US, 1 in 4 people became unemployed, and wages for the remaining workforce were basically cut in half. Bread lines and soup kitchens became a common sight, and many people lost their homes and savings. One farmer of the day knew he couldn't afford to feed his sheep, so he slit their throats and threw them down a canyon instead of letting them starve. It's like,
Wow.
what? They don't like sheep? The events of 1929 set off a decade of economic hardship that culminated in Earth's favorite pastime, World War. Number 5, 1601. If you take one thing away from this video,
Is that the witch trials? When were the witch trials? I was just in Salem. No, that was 1692.
it should be that volcanoes are bad. So bad, in fact, that one volcano in Peru basically turned the lights off for the whole planet. The eruption of Huayna Patina in 1600 was one of the largest volcanic events in recorded history, spewing vast amounts of ash into the
Bro, I want to see the volcano eruption that's that big that it blacks out the sun from the whole world. One volcano erupting that much.
atmosphere. The summer of 1601 was known as the summer with no sunshine. Sunlight levels dramatically decreased everywhere in the world, causing mass famine, but nowhere more so than Russia. The lack of sunlight led to crop failures and livestock death. A third of the Russian population starving to death in the 2 years following the eruption. No sunshine also meant it was extremely cold, so to keep warm, many in the region turned to killing any animal with fur they could find, not just for food, but also to create clothing and blankets. Accounts from the time describe people so desperate for food that they ate grass, their pets, and each other. Which means all of us are just one cloudy summer away from cannibalism.
I'm not eating my dog. That's the one thing I'm saying right now. I would not eat my dog. If I was starving, bro.
Number 4, 1940.
I will. You'll eat my dog or you're going to eat your dog. Javi, I'm telling you right now, you ain't eating my dog. I'm eating you before I'm eating my dog.
42. Not much to see here, just worldwide violence and genocide resulting in millions of deaths. At the tail end of 1941, Japan made a monumental strategic error and, not so elegantly, insisted that the U.S. become heavily involved in World War
Wait, which one is this? Oh, 1942.
II. This essentially turned America into a death factory, where every able-bodied human was either making stuff that killed people or just killing people.
And this is when we really became a war-based economy. Ugh.
The war effort mobilized entire populations, leading to the development of new weapons and technologies, including the Manhattan Project, which would cause all kinds of problems for future humans. Meanwhile, soldiers and civilians in Russia...
And it was a like, the Manhattan Project was terrible, but, like, even if the Manhattan Project didn't happen, nuclear bombs would still exist, right? It was just who's the motherfucker to make it first. Like, nuclear bombs exist whether or not Oppenheimer makes it. Right. Like the Russians would have made the bomb. At some point, China would have made a bomb. Japan would have made a bomb. Somebody would have made a bomb.
Russia and China were dying by the thousands every day. The brutal fighting on the Eastern Front and the Pacific Theater claimed millions of lives.
Dude, I used to think that, I mean, it's kind of incomparable because it depends on the battle, but I used to think World War II, like battling in World War II would be like objectively worse than like trench warfare in World War I. But trench warfare is fucking so scary, bro. I had somebody describe to me what trench warfare was like truly like, and being alive in that time, dude, evil. Because there was almost no rules. So it was do whatever the fuck you want. There would be gas that would come over and you would just suffocate from that. But more so, like, if you're in the trench, there's bombs going off constantly. Doom, 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 doom. You're getting shell shock. That's why they called it shell shock. It was PTSD. But it was called shell shock because there was constantly bombs going off. Humans are only made to endure high-stress scenarios for short spans of time. Because in a 5-minute span, like say there's a lion or something that's approaching you, you're genetically made to deal with that stress in that 5-minute span, and either you're alive or dead, and then you move on. But in World War I, during trench warfare, that was just all the time. There was nonstop bombs. So you were always in that high-stress scenario, and if you were still alive, you were just waiting to die. And when the bomb stopped, you would go, oh, we're good now. When the bomb stopped, that meant the other people were running at you. So if you're awake for 18 hours, you're getting an hour of sleep, then you're awake for 18 hours. You're getting an hour of sleep, you're awake for 18 hours. And you hear silence, that means you have to run to your guns because the other guys are running to you to jump into your trench and kill you. And they're gassing you out. They're doing all this other shit. There would be guys, they would draft, say they had to get a letter from one trench to another or another part of the trench. They would give 4 guys the same letter and go, run. Because they knew that 2 of you at least weren't making it. So then if you were the one that made it and you didn't die, they'd give you another letter and they'd go, now run it back. And then you had to fucking try and run that shit back. And fuck that. Then it got to a point where they knew that the other guys were running over, so they would dig other trenches prematurely. And so when they heard the silence, they would run to the back trench, before that one got flooded and then gun those motherfuckers down.
Germany continued its war crimes and genocide, so not great. Number 3, 1943.
It was also really bad in 1942, 1943, World War II in general. Like, one of the biggest things you'll hear people talking about is, like, fighting the Japanese was really scary for Americans because even if they had the edge, the Japanese people wouldn't surrender. So if they ran out of ammo or knew they were going to die, they would just fucking run at your ass with a knife or a bayonet. Like, they would not give up. Like, they would just run at you. Vietnam was scarier too. Well, Vietnam, yeah, Vietnam also, I'm not sitting here saying, like, Americans were the victims. Americans did horrible things too during a large majority of these wars as well. Like, Vietnam, especially, Americans would mow down, like, innocent Vietnamese people. But in Vietnam, yeah, dude, there would just be traps. It was all just like jungle warfare.
Remember 1942? Like that. But again, 1943 saw some of the deadliest battles of World War II. The Battle of Stalingrad.
Yeah, dude, Vietnam especially, what was that one thing they would say? Vietnam message to U.S. speakers. Like, it's like, you're gonna die, GI, or something, is what it would repeatedly say.
During the Vietnam War,
all right, that's not what I want to hear.
This operation involves
It is a very good idea.
Imagine being in the jungle, bro. You're freshly 19, right out of high school, bro. They send your ass all the way across the world, and you're literally watching your fucking friends explode. And you hear this in the jungles.
Defect, GI. It is a very good idea to leave a sinking ship.
And you're covered in dirt. Half your friends are dead.
They lie to you, GI. You know you cannot win this war.
And you're there for no reason, too. Like, World War II, like, you're fighting Adolf Hitler, right? World War II, I don't support war in any way, but, like, Americans in World War II wanted to go to war. People would lie about their age to get into the army. Vietnam was the reverse lottery, bro. They pulled your name. That was a death sentence. Like, being in Vietnam had to have been one of the scariest fucking things ever. Like, having to fight on either side. Like, and dude, you're not even fighting you're fighting against communism. Like, you're not even fighting for, like, oh, the betterment of, like, people being, like, the Jewish people or something. Like, you're literally just going into Vietnam because your government's sending you. You would come back, and there were instances where, like, the soldiers were treated like shit, man. They didn't even like, it wasn't like they praised you when they came back, like World War II. It was so different.
Your rich leaders grow richer while you die in the swamp, GI. They will give you a medal, GI, but only after you are dead.
Like, bro.
Your government lies to you every day, poor soldier.
Like, dude, it's middle of the night and you're hearing that shit. Reverse. The U.S. would play U.S. sounds for Vietnamese people. The Vietnam, what was the tapes the U.S. would play on those big-ass speakers to the Vietnamese guys in the tunnels? Yeah, they would spray shit with Agent Orange, and Agent Orange got people killed. There's a whole video on, like, pesticides and how Agent Orange, like, ruined people. Wandering Souls. Yep, there it is. The U.S. would play this for the people underground. Make you lose your mind so you'd run out of the tunnel and then they'd fucking shoot you in the face.
Stalingrad, one of the bloodiest battles.
People don't realize how, no, I'm serious. Like, you hear about, like, you learn about war, bro, at such, like, a basic level in high school. Like, that shit, bro, like, no, like, people go, oh, war's bad, you're killing people. It's beyond that, dude. It was psychological torture to have to fucking fight in any of these wars.
Battles in history ended in early 1943 with the defeat of the German army. This marked a turning point in the war, but came at a staggering cost of over 2 million casualties.
I always think, dude, being in D-Day, man, that had to be so fucking scary. Being a guy that was getting shipped on D-Day, World War II, you're on a boat, just running on Normandy Beach, watching hundreds of people get mowed down. Explain D-Day? Bro, how do you not, like, see, why do I have to explain? How do you not know? D-Day was when the U.S. were storming the Germans on Normandy Beach, and the Germans had these concrete structures that were hooked with like fucking like like big automatic machine guns. And they had all these spikes on the beaches, so you couldn't really drive up on them. You just had to drop the boat a little like far back, and they would jump off the boat into the water. D-Day boats. So they would be in these boats packed like sardines, and they would drive up to the beach. This hatch would open. They would all run out. All of them would die. Not just the U.S. I'm saying from the U.S.'s perspective. I know there was other countries involved. I'm saying U.S., Germany. Germany was the people that were defending. It's like Saving Private Ryan, yeah. And you would go Canada, France, Australia. Yeah, it was the Allies. It was the Allies versus the Axis powers, but I'm pretty sure the only people on the Axis powers were Germans. Was there Italians in D-Day? I don't know if they were on the lines in D-Day or on the defending side. No, I think it was just Germans up there. I don't know. I'm not a genius on D-Day. Anyway, somebody said this was boring. Fuck out of stream, bro. Who gives a fuck? Imagine, bro, the first waves of these boats of like, you know, all the Allied powers, literally all of them died. All of them died. Like, instantly. And the U.S. and the Allies' strategy was, we're just going to keep sending people. At some point, it was just numbers. It was a numbers game. We have more people than they can kill. And then eventually they got through.
In the Pacific, the Battle of Guadalcanal and the continued island hopping campaign resulted in massive losses on both sides. And Nazi Germany continued doing Nazi Germany things. So again, a horrible time. Number 2, 1347. Welcome to medieval times. You really can't say anything about the mid-1300s that doesn't involve the bubonic plague. In 1347, the Black Death began ravishing most of Eurasia and parts of North Africa.
You hear about the Black Death too. You just start getting black bubbles, growths on your body.
Within a few years, the plague killed roughly a third of Europe, which probably put a pretty big dent into the cappuccino and scarf industries. The plague was caused by a bacterium in the fleas of rats, and rats were basically the podcasts of the 1300s. Completely unwanted, but absolutely everyone had them. Death from the bubonic plague was swift, but painful. An infected person would develop horribly swollen lymph nodes, often accompanied by fever and diarrhea, and would usually be dead in under a week. Medicine of the time was primitive, to say the least. A popular cure for the plague included taking a healthy chicken, plucking its back and bottom clean, and then strapping it to the patient's open sores. The idea was if the chicken became ill, it was helping to pull out the disease from the patient.
Oh, bro, what? So they would try and move the illness from you to another creature?
Okay, let's check your chicken today. Oh, awesome! It's almost dead! You're doing great! This would be repeated until the patient or the chicken died. Often both in many cases. Chickens weren't the only...
What was the odds of living? If you had the Black Plague, what were your survival chances? Probably like 10%. No, I feel like it had to be higher than 0, chat. Come on. Survival chances were extremely low, up to an 80% mortality rate. So there were instances where people would survive. Survival depended heavily on the type of plague. Bubonic had an 18% survival rate, septicemic had a nearly 0, and pneumonic had a 0. The bubonic plague was the most common. You had about a 1 in 5 of living.
Only animal rubbed on boils. Plague doctors also tried rubbing cut-up pieces of snakes on them as well.
Awesome.
See, snakes were considered evil, and so was the plague. So the idea was that if evil things liked other evil things, putting the snake on a boil would trick the plague into following the snake and leave the patient's body.
Wow, so people were really fucking stupid at this time. That's absurd. Wow, that was like the best idea they had. Like, I would rather them go, let's pee on it. Like, I would rather them be like, yeah, you got a wound there. I'm going to pee on it. Then I'm going to rub an alive chicken's butthole on your fucking wounds. So it sucks the fucking... the fucking sickness out.
Another cutting-edge cure for the Black Death was eating crushed emeralds. People who couldn't afford emeralds would drink arsenic or mercury instead, which probably was just a little less effective than the chicken and the snake. All the anguish from this pandemic began to pull society apart at the seams. Many people took the chaos of the situation as an opportunity to steal from the sick and weak. Needless to say, people were so
You're from the sick and weak, bro. If you were one of the guys that lived, you were just straight rolling in it, bro. You just steal everybody's shit. Half the households ain't got anybody in them anymore. They're dead.
scared to help one another. Many were left to die alone in misery. It took centuries for Europe and other parts of the world to recover from the mass destruction of the Black Death. Number 1,
Yeah, I could easily see, dude. If you're in the UK, over half of London dies. Like you're gonna need 30, 40 years to just rebuild society.
36. This is essentially a greatest hits of all the worst moments from human history. Things kick off with our old friend the supervolcano, which sent a cloud of volcanic ash over the entire northern hemisphere. This left most of the world in virtual darkness for 18 months, brought the global temperature down 30 degrees, and caused, say it with me, widespread famine. Things were extra bad in China, where dust rained to the ground by the handful, and 70 to 80% of the population died. The lack of sunlight led to crop failures, starvation, and social unrest. But wait, there's more! On top of extreme
Yeah, that's pretty scary, dude, living in like perma-darkness.
food scarcity, a plague broke out in Europe. People would break out in pus-filled boils before perishing by the thousands, making disposal of the bodies impossible. Bodies were heaped in piles or thrown into the sea, only to wash back up days later. And the southern hemisphere wasn't spared. To make things worse, 536 had a powerful El Nino that warmed the waters off the South American coast, killing fish stocks, flooding the coasts, and you guessed it, causing widespread famine. So yeah, 536...
Oh my god, dude. People were literally just like constantly on the... I feel like societies pre like 1600s were just constantly on the brink of death like every 50 years. Like, oh my god.